INFJs are deeply emotional people. They feel things intensely and notice details others miss. They care deeply about how others feel and often place themselves in the emotional center of relationships. But even with this emotional depth, INFJs can have trouble taking care of their own feelings. In fact, many INFJs ignore their emotional needs entirely, without even knowing they're doing it. This isn't because they don't care about themselves. It's because they are so focused on the emotions of others that their own get pushed aside. They might feel sadness, anger, or even burnout, but instead of expressing or dealing with those feelings, they keep moving forward. They check in on others. They help solve problems. They give advice. But they don't stop to ask, what do I need right now? INFJs are natural givers. They're the people who show up, listen deeply, and care without asking for much in return. They often feel like their role in life is to help others, to bring peace, and to be a steady emotional anchor. That kind of role can feel meaningful, but it can also become a burden, especially when it comes at the cost of their own well-being. Ignoring emotional needs doesn't always look like neglect. It can look like always saying yes even when tired. It can look like always being the listener, but never the one being heard. It can look like keeping busy so they don't have to deal with what's happening inside. Over time, this emotional neglect builds up, and INFJs begin to feel disconnected, drained, or even numb. It's important to understand that INFJs don't do this out of weakness. In fact, it's often their strength that gets in the way. They are so used to carrying emotional weight that they forget it's okay to put it down sometimes. They don't want to seem selfish, needy, or dramatic. So instead of asking for help, they stay silent. But silence has a cost, and eventually, their body, mind, or heart starts to send signals that something is off. In this video, we're going to explore 6 signs that an INFJ is ignoring their emotional needs. These signs are often subtle, easy to miss, but they are important to recognize because true balance starts with self-awareness. If you're an INFJ, this may help you recognize habits that no longer serve you. If you love an INFJ, it may help you understand what they're holding inside. Let's begin. Sign number 1. Constantly prioritizing others over themselves. One of the most common signs that an INFJ is ignoring their emotional needs is when they always put others first. At first glance, this may seem like kindness or compassion, and it is. But when this becomes a pattern, when they never choose themselves, it turns into quiet self-abandonment. INFJs are wired to care. They notice when someone is hurting, and they want to help. They listen without interrupting. They give advice even when they're tired. They stay up late to comfort a friend, even when they're mentally drained. Over time, this creates an imbalance. They're always giving, but rarely receiving. They often believe that their worth comes from what they give. So saying no feels wrong. Taking space feels selfish. Asking for help feels like a burden. So, instead of honoring their own limits, they push past them for others. This habit can be hard to break because it's often praised. People say, "You're such a good listener," or "You're always there for me." The INFJ feels valued for what they do, not who they are. That kind of praise creates pressure. They start to believe they have to keep giving, even when it hurts. But deep inside, the INFJ starts to feel tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. They might start to feel invisible in their own relationships. They support everyone else, but who supports them? They might not even realize how lonely they feel, because they've trained themselves to ignore their own needs. This also creates resentment. The INFJ might start to feel frustrated, even angry, but not know why. They still care about the people in their life, but a part of them feels overextended. The kindness starts to feel like a job. The support begins to feel like a weight. They may even pull away from people, not because they don't love them, but because they're emotionally drained. But instead of recognizing this as a need for self-care, the INFJ feels guilty. They wonder if they're letting people down, so they keep giving. And the cycle repeats. The truth is, INFJs cannot pour from an empty cup. No one can. Emotional needs don't disappear just because they're ignored. They build, and eventually they demand attention, through exhaustion, burnout, or emotional numbness. To break this pattern, INFJs need to start asking themselves small questions. What do I need today? Do I actually want to do this? Is this coming from love, or obligation? These questions can help them return to balance. Choosing themselves doesn't mean they stop caring. It means they learn how to care without losing themselves in the process. Sign number 2, suppressing their own emotions. INFJs feel deeply, but that doesn't mean they always express it. In fact, one of the clearest signs that an INFJ is ignoring their emotional needs is their habit of hiding their feelings, even from themselves. They do this for many reasons. Sometimes they don't want to bother anyone. Sometimes they fear being misunderstood. Other times, they simply don't know how to put their emotions into words. So instead of trying, they push it all down. They pretend it's not there. This can look like brushing off sadness, saying, "I'm fine," when they're not, smiling when they feel like crying, helping others while quietly falling apart. On the outside, they seem stable. On the inside, they're carrying a storm. The INFJ might even convince themselves they're okay. They get used to ignoring what they feel. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They tell themselves that time will fix everything. But time doesn't heal what isn't faced. Suppressed emotion doesn't go away. It shows up in other ways. In body tension, in anxiety, in sleep problems, in random moments of overwhelm. INFJs may start snapping at people or crying unexpectedly, not because of one small thing, but because of everything they've held in. They also start to feel emotionally numb. They lose interest in things they love. They feel disconnected from people they care about. They might say, "I just feel off," but they don't know why. The reason is simple. They've been holding in too much for too long. Sometimes, INFJs suppress emotions because they were taught to. Maybe they grew up in a family that didn't talk about feelings. Maybe they were told to be strong or get over it, so they learned to hide pain instead of face it. But true strength isn't silence. True strength is honesty. And honesty starts with admitting how you feel, even if no one else hears it but you. For INFJs, this might mean journaling, crying, speaking out loud, or talking to a trusted friend or therapist. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. Because the more they express, the lighter they become. And slowly their emotional world becomes less like a storm and more like a place of peace. Sign number 3, avoiding conflict at all costs. INFJs value harmony. They want everyone around them to feel safe, respected, and understood. But this deep need for peace can also lead them to avoid conflict completely, even when something is wrong. This is another sign that an INFJ is ignoring their emotional needs. They may notice when someone crosses a line, hurts their feelings, or acts unfairly. But instead of speaking up, the INFJ stays quiet. They may smile and nod. They may change the subject. They may pretend it didn't happen. Not because they don't care, but because they don't want to make things worse. They fear that if they speak up, they'll be misunderstood or rejected. They worry that the other person will become angry or defensive. They imagine every possible outcome, and most of them feel risky, so they stay silent. Over time, this silence builds tension inside. The INFJ may feel frustrated, sad, or even angry, but they won't say anything. They may replay the moment in their head over and over. They may even have imaginary conversations, saying everything they wanted to say. But in real life, they keep the peace. This habit of avoiding conflict is harmful in the long run. It teaches others that the INFJ will tolerate anything. It teaches the INFJ that their feelings don't matter. And it creates an invisible wall between them and the people they care about. It also affects their self-esteem. Every time they avoid speaking up, they tell themselves, "My needs aren't important. My voice doesn't matter." And slowly, they start to believe it. Some INFJs don't even realize they're avoiding conflict. They think they're just being kind, or mature, or respectful. But kindness without honesty isn't real peace. It's quiet pain. Learning to face conflict doesn't mean becoming aggressive. It means becoming honest. It means saying, "That hurt me," or "I need something different," in a calm, clear way. When INFJs begin to speak up, they often feel scared. But with practice, it gets easier. And with each small truth, they begin to feel stronger. They start to see that conflict isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's a bridge, a way to be seen, a way to build real, honest connection. Avoiding conflict is not protection, it's silence. And silence can feel safe, but it can also keep the INFJ emotionally stuck. By learning to speak, even gently, they create space for their emotions. And that's when healing begins. Sign number 4, neglecting self-care routines. When an INFJ is emotionally off balance, one of the first things to go is their self-care. They start forgetting the habits that usually help them feel grounded. They skip meals, sleep poorly, avoid exercise, or stop doing the little things that bring them joy. It's not that they don't care, it's that they're overwhelmed. Because INFJs live so much in their head, it's easy for them to forget their body needs attention too. They might stay up late thinking. They might lose their appetite when they're stressed. They may push through physical exhaustion to meet a deadline or help someone else. But over time, their body sends signals that things are not okay. Neglecting self-care doesn't always look dramatic. It can be as simple as skipping breakfast, not drinking enough water, ignoring the need to move, rest, or breathe. INFJs can become so focused on emotional issues that they forget their basic physical needs. When this happens often, it begins to affect their mood. They feel more tired, more anxious, more sensitive. But instead of linking it to self-care, they think something is wrong with them. They forget that the foundation of emotional balance starts with meeting their basic needs. This also includes their mental and emotional space. INFJs may stop journaling, reading, meditating, or creating, things that usually help them process feelings. Instead, they withdraw, go quiet, and shut down. Part of the issue is that they often don't feel allowed to take care of themselves. They feel selfish for resting, lazy for saying no, indulgent for doing something just for joy. But none of that is true. Self-care isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's how the INFJ shows love to themselves. And when they are well, they have more to offer others without draining themselves. Getting back on track doesn't require a big life change. It starts with simple steps: drinking water, getting enough sleep, making space for silence, doing something small that feels good. Those moments build emotional strength. They remind the INFJ that they deserve care too, not just from others, but from themselves. Sign number 5, feeling unappreciated but not voicing it. INFJs. INFJs give so much time, energy, care, attention. But when they feel unappreciated, they usually don't say a word. Instead, they stay quiet, hoping someone will notice. They don't want to seem needy or demanding. So they wait. And as they wait, the hurt builds. They may keep showing up for others, even while feeling invisible. They may still offer help, support, and love, all while wondering why no one sees their effort. Deep down, they start to feel like their care doesn't matter, like their presence isn't valued, like their kindness is expected, not appreciated. This silence is often rooted in fear. Fear of seeming selfish, fear of being rejected, fear that if they ask for more, they'll lose what little they have. So they stay quiet, but inside they're frustrated, maybe even heartbroken. They feel taken for granted, but they don't express it. And the longer they hold it in, the more distant they become, the more bitterness they carry, the more they pull away from people they used to love deeply. Sometimes they begin to question themselves. Am I overreacting? Maybe I'm just too sensitive. But they're not. They're human. And humans need to feel seen. INFJs need to know that it's okay to ask for appreciation. It's okay to say, I feel unseen. It's okay to say, this relationship feels one-sided. Voicing these feelings doesn't make them weak, it makes them brave. And the right people won't run from that honesty. They'll respond with care. INFJs are not asking for praise, they're asking to feel like they matter. And they do. They just have to believe that speaking up is part of self-respect, not selfishness. Sign number 6, overanalyzing instead of feeling. INFJs are deep thinkers. They love to reflect, to understand, and to make sense of their experiences. But when they're emotionally overwhelmed, they often slip into a pattern of overanalyzing. They try to solve their emotions like a puzzle instead of simply letting themselves feel. This habit of thinking instead of feeling is one of the clearest signs they are ignoring their emotional needs. Here's how it works. Something happens that hurts them. Maybe someone lets them down, or something reminds them of an old wound. Instead of saying, that really hurt, the INFJ starts to overthink. They ask, why did this affect me so much? What did I do wrong? What's the deeper meaning here? They search for logic when what they really need is comfort. The INFJ does this because feelings can be messy, and they like clarity. They like understanding. But some emotions aren't meant to be figured out. Some emotions just need to be felt, sat with, and allowed to move through. When INFJs overanalyze, they stay stuck in their head. They loop through the same thoughts again and again. They might even come to interesting insights, but the emotional energy remains. The sadness, the anger, the grief, it stays inside because it was never really released. This also delays healing. The INFJ believes they're processing their emotions, but what they're really doing is circling around them. Thinking about feelings is not the same as feeling them. Sometimes this pattern shows up as emotional detachment. The INFJ explains how they feel with perfect clarity, but with no emotional connection. It's like reading a report instead of sharing a feeling. They may sound fine on the surface, but inside, they're still hurting. The truth is, emotions don't need to make perfect sense. They need space, they need kindness, and they need expression. Whether that's crying, journaling, talking it out, or simply admitting, I'm not okay right now. Letting go of overthinking doesn't mean ignoring insight. It means balancing thought with feeling. It means trusting that emotions have value, even when they don't come with clear answers. For the INFJ, this shift is powerful. It brings relief, it brings healing, and it brings them back to their full human self. Someone who not only thinks deeply, but also feels deeply, and allows both to exist without fear. INFJs are known for their emotional depth, their intuition, and their quiet strength. But all of that inner complexity can make it easy for them to overlook something important, their own emotional needs. They spend so much time being there for others, being kind, being thoughtful, that they sometimes forget to ask themselves, am I okay? And by the time they realize something's wrong, they're already feeling disconnected, tired, or numb. Ignoring emotional needs doesn't mean someone is weak. It means they've gotten used to hiding parts of themselves to survive, to keep peace, or to avoid rejection. For INFJs, this often happens quietly. They stay calm on the outside while carrying everything on the inside. But the truth is, INFJs deserve care too, not just from others, but from themselves. They deserve to rest without guilt, to speak without fear, to cry when they're hurting, to ask for what they need, to say no, to say yes, to feel, not just think, to be human, not just helpful. Every sign we've talked about points to one thing. The INFJ needs to return to themselves, to slow down, to listen to their body, to feel their feelings, to stop giving so much to others that they have nothing left for themselves. This isn't selfish, it's survival, it's health, it's truth. Because when an INFJ starts honoring their emotions, when they stop hiding, stop pushing, stop overthinking, they become even stronger. Not harder, not colder, just more whole. They become someone who gives with a full heart, not an empty one. Who speaks with honesty, not just harmony. Who connects, not just supports. So if you're an INFJ and you've seen yourself in these signs, let this be your reminder. Your needs matter. Your emotions matter. You matter. Start small. Start today. One honest feeling at a time.